So a English Welsh longbow could shoot 250 yards accurately. That's 2 football fields. That's soccer, to if you're from America. 2 football fields length accurately, dead precision. The English and Welsh longbow was the most deadly weapon in the Middle Ages. An English Welsh archer, an English Welsh longbowman could shoot 12 arrows a minute. Right, Chris?
That's right.
There you go. Think about that for a second. That is, get the arrow out, aim it, fire it up to 250 yards with dead precision. Yeah? Now, I want you to notice something because there's a difference between this arrow slit and this arrow slit. Part of it's covered up, but you notice the cross here. I get asked about the difference in the arrow slits a lot, and people ask me, was the crossed arrow slit religious in some way? No, it was not. It was purely part of war technology advancing. So it acts like a sight. So think about your arrow here, right? And your arrow this is going to act as your sight. And your arrow is going to go through here. So it gave you a way to aim better. So that's also, they've tried to recreate the English and Welsh longbow in modern times. And they've tried to do it as successfully as they can, but they know that it's not completely all the way up to what it would have been. And they have found that it takes minimum of 150 pounds of pressure to pull back the string on an English Welsh longbow. Archers began to train when they were very, very young. And we have found, if we look at bodies, if we look at skeletons of archers, we actually know if they were an archer or not because their bodies were deformed with the arm that pulls back the string. I'm trying. There's just Evelyn, who got gifted, make sure to, sorry, Whitney. Yes, Whitney's talking about subs. I'll tell you that in what you get. There's a whole bunch of things you get if you were gifted a subscription. So yes, I'll tell that closer to the end of the live. I'll tell you all the things you get when somebody gifts you a live subscription. Amazing. All right, back to the story. So Edward came with his army. He was supposed to go to France, but the weather prohibited him from going to France. Then he found out the planned attacks, the rebellion, the revolt, the uprising that was happening here by the native Welsh, led by Madog ap Llywelyn. And he diverted. He came here as fast as he possibly could. The weather was so bad, he gets separated from the mass of his forces because it was flooding so bad. And he is forced to come to Conwy Castle, which we're walking to. I'm walking slow, guys, because it's slippery and it is steep. Also, what if this was your house and this was your yard and your yard was up on the city wall? I love that. Yes, please. Thank you, Kristen. Shake that cord, you bet. I love it. All right. So he's forced to go to Conwy, and he has to spend Christmas here and through up until the spring. He gets here, it is a disaster. It is a disaster when he gets here. Here's another one of our 8 towers. It's a disaster. There's actually a chronicler that wrote about when Edward came here. Now, let's discuss about chroniclers. Let's discuss about the old chroniclers. They tend to be biased, not a wee bit biased or kind of biased. They end up being really, really, really biased. And we get kind of a fantastical story about Edward, but it's really interesting. Everybody who is a live subscriber, by the way, one of the things you get as a live subscriber is we have a book club, and we're currently reading about Marie Antoinette. And I really would like to read about Edward I in our next book club because he's a bit of a conundrum and a confusing one. He did horrible, 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 horrible things. Being a nice guy was not part of the job description of being a king. Being a successful king, if you were considered a successful, powerful king, the two things that were most important about that were to fill your coffers, to make it so that the nation had a surplus, that you had more money when you left than when you came in. You could afford everything. Similarly to presidents and prime ministers now. The second thing in the Middle Ages was expanding your territory. If we're talking about that, then Edward I was a really successful king. And in the midst of all of the horrible, horrible, horrible things that he did, there's some personality traits that are really fascinating about Edward. One of them being, and I always mention this, he never cheated on any of his wives. I can count on one hand the amount of kings that never had a mistress in the world. Edward never had a mistress. He never cheated on any of his wives. He was an amazing military leader, and he was very, very, what's the word I'm looking up for? He cared about his soldiers a lot, and he cared about the honor of his soldiers, what they did for him. He